After years of watching trailers and grabbing screenshots, the pixel art cyberpunk game released earlier this year. With a distinct art style, up close combat, and sweeping future city landscapes, Replaced had been on my radar for a long time. Did this game live up to the hype, or did it fall away into the gutters of mediocrity? Find out in this newest episode of Ginger's Thrust Trophies. Hey, what's up, Synthwave citizens? My name is GingerThrust, and you're watching a brand new game review on Ginger's Thrust Trophies, where I play through a game off camera, and then I review and score it just like a grown-up games journalist does, except hopefully without all of the internet backlash that seems to come with something like that. So with this go around, I've decided to change up the scoring system a bit because I wanted to enhance it for my playstyle, but also I wanted to create a system that better matches how the channel theme is. Here's how the scoring criteria goes. I will rate the game off of 5 different categories. It'll be the narrative and acting, the visual design of the game, the audio design of the game, the gameplay mechanics, and then finally the music and score. I'll assign a 1 through 5 point scoring on each of those 5 categories, and then we'll tally those scores up at the end. If a game earns 10 to 14 points from my scoring system, it's going to earn the static trophy. 15 to 19 points will earn the signal trophy, and then 20 to 24 points will earn the prestigious overdrive trophy. And if somehow a game gets a perfect 25 points, then I'm going to award it the amazing, spectacular, totally serious prismatic trophy. So now that we've set the standards and the scoring, let's talk about Replaced. Replaced is the debut game from the diverse group of indie developers at Sad Cat Studios. This cyberpunk action platformer puts players in the shoes of Reach, an AI program accidentally uploaded into the body of its co-creator, Warren Marsh. Reach escapes into the sprawling post-apocalyptic landscapes of Phoenix City, one of the few mega cities remaining in America in an alternate history of the 1980s. The player must guide Reach on its journey to get back into the lab of its inception and remove itself from Warren's body, while also learning about humanity's fight to live and the blurred line between human and artificial consciousness. The first thing to discuss about this game, which to me is the most obvious selling point of it, is the visual design of it. Replace shows off an impressive 2.5D pixel art design previously seen in games such as Square Enix's JRPG Octopath Traveler. The player travels along a primarily linear level design, though there are points in which Reach can traverse forward or backwards to different depths of the level. The layers of color and detail stand out to show a complex visual design. I don't recall a time in any of these levels in which I felt like the background or set pieces seemed rushed or smoothed out from an art design point of view. But what really sold the visuals for me was a combination of creative camera perspectives and an amazing lighting engine. Generating shadow designs that move with a character can have been easy for the developers, and the painstaking detail applied to the lighting and shadows shows a love for the craft I can absolutely appreciate. Several times I found myself walking back and forth across a lighting source just to watch how Reach was shadowed from one step to the next. Also, Sad Cat's ability to change the camera perspective during cinematic moments helped make this game feel like art rather than just pixels moving back and forth. Nailing a cyberpunk aesthetic in a pixel art format is incredibly admirable, and that's why I'm going to award 5 points to the visual design of Replaced. Narratively, I picked up on several themes and plot devices I've seen before in cyberpunk-themed sci-fi films like Dread or Upgrade. I don't say this as a dig or a detriment to the game, though. Even with some similarities, I can't quite say I could predict where the story of Replaced was going during my 12-hour playthrough. I enjoy the different lore entries and documents to discover because they not only told a compelling history of the world of Replaced, but also gave some humanity and insight to the present setting. There's a clear focal point among the different characters of the game on the dangers of AI and its use in fundamental infrastructure. Yet Sad Cat also portrays Reach as an inquisitive being who is discovering just what makes something alive, regardless of its nature as either biological or synthetic. Though the plot didn't quite keep me on the edge of my seat, Replaced drove enough interest in a lived-in and almost desolate world to hold me throughout its 10 chapters. Unfortunately, there is no voice acting in Replaced, so I can only speak to the dialogue and text script. With this game taking place in the 80s, there's definitely that retro bravado in many of the characters' tones that you'd find in 80s films. While Reach appeared to be an inquisitive and deeply intuitive personality, many of the other supporting characters played like a certain archetype, such as the rogue and brash rebel, or the strong, mostly silent base leader type. Here and there, some NPCs are sprinkled around in less action-based levels to interact with, but most of the dialogue occurs between a handful of characters. One thing I wish the game did have was voice acting. I understand that this is a much smaller project to develop with tech and budget limitations, and I don't think the game suffers as a result of the lack of fully voiced characters. However, I think the tone and design of Replaced was so well done that voice acting could have sent it over the top. The voices in my head could only do these characters so much justice after all. But with a compelling story and a script that oozes retro without drowning in it, Replaced gets a 4 on the narrative and acting category for me. The gameplay in Replaced pleasantly surprised me. With something that looked this visually impressive and unique, I was honestly expecting a more on-the-rails kind of experience, something more akin to, say, a walking simulator. I figured that players were going to be taken on a visual journey rather than a playable experience, but Sadcat was able to actually do both here. The game places Reach in melee combat situations as contained experiences rather than as common occurrences, and each fight feels pretty brutal. Replaced employs a slower combat style with one melee combo attack and a block and counter system similar to something you'd see in the Batman Arkham games. Later fights allow Reach to employ other weapons such as a fireable handgun and a secondary pickaxe type weapon, with each having a very specific use in the combat. Players can also use finishers on enemies with satisfying results, which I personally enjoy doing. This doesn't mean that combat is easy though. Several times I lost due to attempting to button mash or not using the right tool at the correct time. Replace's combat system is a bit of a learning curve, but I never felt like fights were too hard too soon. I do feel as if they became a bit formulaic by the latter half of the game, and I would have enjoyed a bit more variety in enemy types that required more mechanics to defeat. Platforming sections showed off more of the beautiful design elements of Replaced. Reach can jump, mantle, and swing across the map in defined areas. Each level felt like it had a flow to the solution of a puzzle or a door I needed to get to. In fact, there were several times I had to sit and ponder on a solution to advance, and I appreciated a good environmental puzzle to break up the running and the combat. However, this is one area in which the visual style of the game was a slight hindrance to me. Several locations that contained climbable elements weren't as easy to see due to the visual level design, specifically when it came to interacting with things in the background. And look, before you come at me saying I'm the guy that needs the yellow paint in video games, just know that what I'm referring to here was just one or two different mechanics that were throughout the game, so calm down, keyboard warrior. I just would be remiss if I didn't mention that I failed jumps and traversal in several areas until I realized I was missing a grabbable thing that didn't look visually obvious. I won't let that bring the score down for the gameplay mechanics though, so I give all of this section a 4. Not only did Sadcat do a great job of drawing these beautiful environments, they also did really well at their audio design. City or camp areas felt busy and lived in. I was impressed the sounds in this game felt rich instead of some form of analog or stock placement sound. Even though there wasn't any voice acting, the developers still placed crowd and group sounds in as well, giving life to the NPCs in the city. Weapon sound effects cemented the cyberpunk futuristic feel without making them sound too sci-fi. I have no complaints in here either, so let's slide the audio design team a 5. Finally, the whipped cream of the vibe sundae, the music. I've played games of these types of settings before where the music felt gamey, something like Synthwave without soul at times, if you know what I mean. Replaced is innocent of that, thankfully. There's an almost haunting quality to the soundtrack here where you never quite feel safe. Phoenix City is not a place full of happiness, and the soundtrack mirrors that with darker electronic tracks. The game even allows you to experience these tracks whenever you please by leaving them around the game as collectibles. Ask any fan of the cyberpunk and synthwave genre, the music is the foundation of so much of that atmosphere, and if you don't get that right, then the rest of the project feels imbalanced. I'm slapping a fat neon 5 on the music design for Replaced. And there you have it, my full list of thoughts on Replaced by Sadcat Studios. I was real nervous about playing this game at first due to the years of waiting and only seeing snippets of the game. The developers didn't disappoint though, and I enjoyed every minute of my playthrough of this. I definitely recommend Replaced if you're a fan of things like Blade Runner, Cyberpunk 2077, or anything in between. So, with all that being said, let's tally the scores. Replaced came in at a total GingerThrust score of 23, which means it gets the amazing, stupendous Overdrive trophy. Now, I can hear you naysayers already saying, Ginger, you're a big Synthwave freak. Of course you're going to rate this game super high. Yeah, it appealed to me in a variety of forms and ways, but I can still try to look at it objectively. This is a vibe-soaked 12-hour experience that I loved, and I hope that you get to play it and enjoy it as well. Replaced is on Steam and Xbox platforms, and for full disclosure, I played my copy of it through PC Game Pass. Great job to everybody at Sad Cat Studios for creating such a cool game. I hope you all enjoyed watching or listening to this review. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel so that you can catch all the different game reviews I do and the Let's Plays and all the chatting that I do about my love for the gaming genre. Until next time, my name is GingerThrust, and I'll see you in the static. Peace.